Welcome to the Well-Rounded Retirement Podcast with John and Jim from CRIS Financial. In this podcast, we help you take a well-rounded approach to retirement planning so you can retire with complete certainty. If you're looking for proven and straightforward retirement advice, ranging from how to protect your assets to how to spend with confidence, this show is for you.
Hello and welcome to Well-Rounded Retirement with Jim Donewald and John Glowacz from CRIS Financial. Gentlemen, how are you this morning?
We're doing great.
Good to be here.
I am so excited about today's podcast. I say that, but I'm not really. Because we're talking about taxes, and that scares me. Taxes in retirement specifically, with everything that's going on in the world today. This is a huge issue, and so I know that's why you guys wanted to talk about it today. I mean, how do we even start this podcast?
Yeah, it's not sexy, but it's important.
Yeah.
I think what we'll do is kind of just give everyone a feel like what's changed over time, and that's really what it comes down to. Because our strategies need to change as the time needs to change, and we just don't have the same options that we used to have.
You know, we had a paradigm shift, and so let's talk about that old school retirement paradigm. And this is how your parents retired. They worked for the same company their whole career. And what would they get when they retired at 65? They'd get a gold watch, right? A pension. That's exactly right. But how many of you worked for the same company for your whole career? It used to be everyone, but these days only 25 to 30% of those still work for the same company that they started with when they were younger. A lot of folks used to retire, then they'd sit around, have a stagnant lifestyle, and then as they moved into the 21st century, that old paradigm started to change.
Yeah, I heard the statistic that something like people change careers 4 to 6 times in their lifetime. I mean, change careers, not just companies. That blows my mind. So yeah, definitely things have changed.
Well, that's exactly it. So that's what we found, that just like you said, most of our clients have 6 to 7 old 401ks that are lying around.
Wow.
They don't have that same pension anymore. They're just not out there. The employers don't want to pay them, don't want to be responsible, so they've turned them over to the clients. Lots of times our clients, like I say, have several of them. We call them zombie plans because nobody's watching them. They're just kind of hanging out there, and they need some help. And also what it brings to a point is that much more of the reliance is on you. I mean, you need to come up with it. When the pension was taken care of, it was very nice. Now it's all your responsibility. And some of our clients do real well with that, and some of our clients need some help.
And they have to rely on their investments more so than they used to. It used to be that they would have a pension with their company, and then they would receive Social Security. But now that's kind of flipped in the new paradigm as to where they're relying on Social Security, and then they're having to rely on their own investments in order to supplement that Social Security.
Yeah, somewhere along the line, Social Security morphed into their retirement plan, and that's never what it was designed to be. It was designed to be it was supposed to be a supplement to what you already had. So, and if you think about it too, people spend 20, 30 years in retirement. So it's more important that we get this on the right road right away.
You know, another thing, Jim, too, is that back when people had pensions, 40 people were paying in for every one person that received Social Security. And then you fast forward to today, only 3 people are paying in for every one person that's receiving Social Security. So, where are we headed with this?
Eric, do you know?
I have no idea. I mean, here's the thing, is that people are living longer, right? And like you said, they may spend 25 or 30 years in retirement, but and I'm 46 years old, right? So I've got a ways till I retire. But the thing is that we know with medical advances and technology and all that stuff, my retirement may even look longer than that, maybe longer than what is projected right now. So that's a little scary to me.
Well, I'll tell you, my family's the perfect example here. My grandparents did not live a very long life. So I was never counting on the longevity gene in my family. And then both my parents lived to 88, relatively healthy the whole time. So it had to make me rethink my own retirement. It's just, we don't know. And, there's 2 big fears in life, and one of them is certainly running out of money too soon.
Mm-hmm. What's the other one?
I can't remember.
Greed. No. Cut that
Clowns. I think it's clowns. Yeah. I think it's running out of money in retirement, and clowns are the 2 big ones that scare people most. Sorry, if you're listening to this and you're a professional clown, I apologize. That's Eric Johnson's opinion only. not to be held by CRIS Financial. Anyway, go ahead, guys.
Yeah. And the other thing, too, is, when you got to think about when you start getting into that retirement, we lose all our deductions. I mean, what's helping most people while they're working is, right, you're paying them a mortgage. You're contributing to your 401k. You've got children at home. Maybe you give substantially to charity. These things all help. But when we get into retirement, hopefully we either paid the house off or we're paying very little in the way of interest. The children, hopefully they're not living at home, and if they are, you can't deduct them anymore. And we found that most people, once they retire, if they give to charity, they're still very much involved in their charities, but now they typically will give their time and not so much the money. Well, what does the IRS think about your time? What's it worth to them?
Virtually nothing.
So we lose all these deductions. So we've got a series of problems that potentially come up to play, that we're going to have more and more of our money probably taxed in retirement. The other thing that we found is, for most of our clients that come in, they don't want a lot less money. It used to be the old paradigm was you'll need a lot less money, you'll be in a lower tax bracket when you retire. Well, my clients want 80, 90, 100% of the income they're making now. And the reality is their tax rates may be higher in retirement. So that's that paradigm shift that John was talking about earlier. If you work during your working life and you retire and it's a lower tax bracket, then IRAs make all sorts of sense. It's great. You're putting that money away when taxes are high, and you're going to take it out later when taxes are low. But what we're finding is we've put that money away, which was still a good deal, but now we may be taking it out and taxes may be a whole lot higher.
Here's the other thing is that's been on my mind a lot, and I've had conversations with people. Two things. One thing surprised me about 6 months ago. I didn't realize that if one of the partners dies, that the second person, the one that's still living, their taxes go up because now they're considered single. That's just completely unfair, in my opinion. Again, we can talk about fairness issues on another podcast, but I think that's terrible. It's almost like they lose somebody they love, and then now your taxes are going to go up because you're single. And then the second thing that I've had a lot of conversations with lately because of our situation is that, a lot of people are facing much higher taxes because of all the money that's poured into the economy because of the coronavirus situation, the pandemic. I don't know what the number is at this point, but the small business loans, the stimulus packages, I think we're over $2 trillion. The government's going to want that back, and that's called taxes. So that's a little scary for somebody facing retirement in the next 5 to 10, 15 years.
So we had this lady come into our office the other day, and she was a little bit older. She was about 77 years old, and we had a long conversation, and we talked about her portfolio. And she had everything from commodities and high-risk strategies, and we just chatted as to what would be in her best interest. And she decided there was two things that she wanted to focus on. One was reduce her risk, and two was to eliminate some of these taxes that she could see coming at her. She's paying some of them now. So what we were able to do was move some of this money into some of our investment strategies that have a floor on them. So there's zero risk. They also provide the benefit that we can kind of piecemeal turn them into Roth. So what that allows us to do, rather than take a big chunk and eat the elephant in one sitting, this allows us to convert that slowly to a Roth over the next 5-6 years. And this helped her tax situation dramatically. So it's going to reduce her taxes. We reduced her taxes, we reduced her risk, and we just simplified her life, which was exactly what she was looking for at this point.
Yeah, and again, you're doing it well before the taxes change, because when they change, I'm sure she would have been in a world of hurt, in the next 5 or 6 years. I think you said 2026 is when things either revert or taxes are going up. So,
well,
that's
not only
fantastic.
would she be in a world of hurt, though, but it would also be her heirs as well, because then they would be fully taxed on whatever it is whatever she left her inheritance for.
Yeah, this is truly a win-win, all the way around.
Absolutely.
Well, that's another thing, too, that, Eric, is that people are relying on their investment strategies during retirement with their 401ks, their 457s, their TSP accounts, and all these different accounts that they contribute to, not thinking about the tax implications that will happen or occur at the time that they do retire, because now they're going to have all these taxable events that are coming, and so they don't pay much attention to what's going on with their investments in the 401ks, et cetera. And it kind of reminds me of a story that I heard from Zig Ziglar. He's a motivational speaker.
Oh, yeah.
And, well, he basically tells the story of a great archer, that he can pull back on the bow and he hits the bullseye on the target nearly every single time. And not only that, he can pull back on the bow again and split the first arrow in the bullseye. But what that basically would happen is that if you took that same archer and you blindfolded him, spun him around, and then he took another shot, would he hit the target? And that's kind of what we're doing with our 401ks. We're told to contribute our money into the 401ks. They don't tell us anything about the tax implications that are going to occur at the time that we start taking any kind of withdrawals to supplement our Social Security. And that becomes an issue at one point or another.
Yeah, what we find is, when I ask everybody, and I'll ask you right now, what's your tax rate? Do you think it's too high? I've never had anybody say, I've never had anybody say no. I've never had anybody say no regardless of what the tax rate is.
Can I pay more?
Can I pay more? Yeah. So right now, we're actually, if you look back at history, we actually have a tax sale going on right now. John and I teach a college course on this very subject, and one of the things we go back to is a little history here. And what's the highest marginal tax rate, in the United States? It's 94%. And I don't think a lot of people, know that. And it was 70% in the 70s. So right now, with where taxes are, I think it's a great time to potentially move some of your money to that tax-free bucket. You mentioned earlier, and it was spot on, that when we're going into retirement, we have our loving spouse, we're looking at all this fun stuff. But I just had a client in the office the other day, and during the planning process, his wife passed away. It was horrible, and he's a young guy. And as we were talking, what it really did though was make what we were doing for him so much more important, because he didn't realize, just like you mentioned, that if you're making 80 grand and you're the 22% tax bracket as a married couple, as a single person, it's 40,000 to be, it gets cut in half. So your taxes go up just by one person passing away, which we're not planning on, most of us. So it's really tough, and the government, I hate to say this, but they're just dying, to get a piece of that money back into circulation. That's what they do.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you look at the tax structure, like I say, we do this in the college course, so I've got my big whiteboard and everything. But just think about it this way: on the far left-hand side, you have your taxable investments, your savings accounts, your brokerage account, all your after-tax money. Then in the middle, you have your tax-deferred accounts. That would be your 401ks, your IRAs, all that. And then at the very right, you have the tax-free, which would be your Roth 401k, some cash value life insurance. What the government wants to do is keep this money back in circulation. So if you think about it, we only have a very short time frame to have control over our IRA money. If we take it out before 59 and a half, there's a 10% penalty. And by age 72, we have to take out the RMDs. So once you take the money out of your IRA, you're going to pay taxes on that because it's never been taxed. And then where does it go? It goes right back into the taxable bucket, which, by the way, is the most inefficient way to grow your funds. We've all had it, right? Let's say you got a CD and it's paying, 1% these days? Yeah. And then you're paying taxes on that. I mean, you're not getting anywhere. So the taxable bucket is good for emergency money, but not for growth. Tax deferred is great for growth, but we still need to deal with the taxes. And we want to get it out of that cycle from tax deferred back into circulation where it's fully taxed again. So a lot of what we recommend to our clients are strategies where we get into the tax-free bucket, which are your Roth conversions, Roth 401ks. There's some other strategies we use as well. We call that tax-free happy land. That's where you want to get your money if you can.
Mm-hmm. So how do we get there?
How do we get there? Well, it's a plan. I was thinking, we had a client come in the other day. I'll tell you what not to do. Let me start there. We had a client come in the other day, and he was very concerned about the market. Market's been very volatile these days. So he was concerned, and he saw advisor before he saw us. And this advisor took his IRA and put it into an annuity, which is a stable program. But here's the problem. So what he did is he solved the gentleman's concern with never running out of money, but he created this enormous tax problem because now that money in that IRA is going to generate all that taxable income. Remember, we've never paid any taxes on that whatsoever, so it's 100% taxable. Add to that, once you're in retirement, you're going to have your Social Security, any pension you do have, that's going to go right on top of it, pushing us up into the higher tax brackets. And one of the things we teach in our course, or we believe strongly, is you mentioned earlier, these tax rates are going to go up significantly. We're at 25 trillion. That's a 25 with 12 zeros after it. That's a lot. And just to service this debt, if interest rates go up at all, it's going to be tough. Plus, you got Social Security, you got Medicare, you got Medicaid. John mentioned earlier how many people used to pay into Social Security versus what's paying in now. And there's a great book by David Walker. I can't remember the name of the book. I've drawn a blank right now, but he was basically we call him the CPA for the USA. He served under Bush and Clinton, and he was bringing this argument up years ago, saying we've got to get our debt under control. And they said, why is this so important? And he gave a very simple answer. He said, it's the math. We just can't support it. And here's an argument I like that I was reading. This was in Forbes. This is an old one. But it keeps talking about how we're going to tax the higher earners. And it says the problem is there's not enough higher earners to satisfy today's debts and deficits. And that put the middle class will soon be right in the scope of the congressional rifle. Because the poor have nothing to tax, the middle class will be forced to ante up. And I think that's right where we're going. So It's one of those where they're going to need money. That's my opinion. There's a lot of reasons they're going to need it. I think, like you say, we just added $2 trillion for the corona. I know they're not done with that either. So to pay for all the programs, Social Security, Medicare, all the FBI, all the things the government does, I think they're going to have to raise taxes, and I think they're going to go up significantly.
Yeah, well, David Walker, when he also did the math on the raising the taxes, Jim, is that he suggested that the tax rate, the high marginal tax rate, is going to have to be 88% from where we are right now at a 39 percent tax rate, and it's going to have to go up to 88%. And so that means the middle class will go to 63% on a tax rate and 25% on the lower tax bracket. So people think that they're paying high taxes now. Wait till they have to pay taxes back on that debt that we've incurred. And which one of those agencies do you start cutting at that point?
Yeah, nothing. I think Ronald Reagan said the definition of something that runs into affinity is a government program. They never cut them.
Right, and we know what do we know about history? History tends to repeat itself, right?
Yeah, that was a great point. That was part of what David Walker was saying too. Is he asked the Congressional Board Office to come up with some kind of budget, what they needed to do, and that's exactly it. So when we talk about tax rates doubling from right now, 22, 24% tax bracket, I think a lot of our listeners will fall into. You go to 63%, which is what they projected, back in 2017, 18. It's going to be a big pain. So that's why we're suggesting to our clients this might be a good time, why we believe taxes are on sale.
Especially with all that money that's in the tax-deferred status, and it's going to be coming due. So it's kind of like the IRS has a hold on your back wallet, a lien on it, so to speak.
Yeah, that's exactly. It's funny because you look at, we got a guy, like say he's got $1 million in his IRA. Well, does he have $1 million in his IRA, or does he have $700,000 and then a $300,000 tax bill? And by the way, we've got a partner, which is the government, the IRS, and they haven't decided what our tax rate's going to be. We don't know right now. Depending we know what our tax rates are today, but when you go to take that out in 5-10 years. What will it be? Maybe much higher, which would make that situation just worse. That's why we'd like our clients to at least address it or take a look at it.
Yeah, absolutely. So if people have 401ks, old 401ks, IRAs currently, what are you doing for them? I mean, obviously, you've mentioned a few strategies here, but give me a scenario. Give the audience a scenario. What happens?
Always. Well, first of all, it always comes down to the purpose. What is the purpose of the money? What we want to do is figure out what your goals are, not what our concerns are, but what are your concerns? If taxes are a concern, we have several strategies. What you want to do is in 2026 is the first chance they have to raise these taxes. And by the way, I want to mention to the listeners out there that when I say 63% is what they're projecting, I was born in 62. And the tax rates back then, the highest marginal tax rate in 62 were 87. The middle class was 56. So this is not out of alignment. This isn't like crazy talk. We've already been there before. There's a chance we could get back there again. So what we want to do is address this depending upon how much money they have in that particular account. There's an ideal mathematical amount to have in your taxable bucket, your tax-deferred bucket, and everything else should be in the tax-free bucket. That's really how it does. Now, we've got proprietary software that helps us figure that out. That's a little bit above my pay grade, but there's a way to figure that out, and then there's a specific formula that we need to follow to get it there. And our goal is to get most of the heavy lifting before 2026, which if they do nothing, our tax rates will go back to where they were in 2017, but I suspect they're going to go much higher.
I don't see any way that they can't. They're not going to go lower, I don't think. But they've got no choice but to go up.
Absolutely. And so that's the starting point. We just have to see what we can move. If you've got a pension, good news, bad news. I'm great that you got a pension, but don't forget your Social Security and your RMDs. Maybe you got rental income. Maybe you've got oil wells. Maybe you've got any other income is going to go on top of that. So just look at your tax rates. If you don't like them now, imagine if they go up, and then imagine if you're making more income. So you can't earn your way out of it. The problem with the tax bucket and the tax deferred bucket is because the taxes keep eating into it. The more money you make, which is great, the more taxes you pay. So it's kind of a leveling effect. That's why I say we want to get out of that merry-go-round. We want to get out of that cycle from taxable to tax deferred back to taxable again, and go taxable, tax deferred, tax free, and start moving some of those funds over. Then in retirement, the difference it makes, we run these reports all the time, and it's not uncommon for this one strategy alone to put an extra $1 million in somebody's portfolio for their inheritance, or to change it from them running out of money at, let's say 90 to 100. Our sweet spot is we like to see the money last to 100. I don't know the longevity in your family, but that's what we shoot for and show our clients the best way to get there.
I love that story you tell, Jim, about the Wile E. Coyote. Maybe you can explain.
Wile E. Coyote. Yeah. Well, we say there's this tax freight train coming. That's what we believe. There's this tax freight train coming. And if you remember the old Wile E. Coyote and Roadrunner, and there's a cartoon. Maybe you've seen it, but he's building a bomb shelter. And by the way, who's it made by?
Acme.
Thank you.
Every time.
And he's building a bomb, and that's also made by
Acme.
Okay, so he's in this shelter, but he didn't realize that he built this shack on top of the railroad tracks. And so he's building his bomb, and as he looks out the window, there's the freight train coming right down on him. And so what does he do right as the train's about to hit? He pulls down the blind.
That's right.
And then there's a big boom, and that's the way it goes. And that's what we feel a lot of people are doing. They're just not paying attention. Either they're not aware, or somehow they think it's going to miss them. And that's fine, but I'm kind of a numbers guy. You got to look at the numbers and see what makes sense.
Yeah, and I'm going to not play devil's advocate by any means, but I'm going to defend the audience from what you just said, because sometimes we just get busy, Jim. Honestly, I just don't have time to look into all these different things. I am busy working my tail off, trying to provide for my family. And it's not that I'm pulling the blinds down or I'm shutting the door, not trying to see something. It's just sometimes it sneaks up on us, right? And that's how I feel a lot of times with certain things that come my way. All of a sudden I get a letter in the mail, or I get an email that I just wasn't expecting, like, oh my gosh, I should have seen it coming, but I just got so busy that I just wasn't paying close enough attention because I'm juggling too many things already.
Well, that happens. There's no, and I'm guilty of it too. But the problem is, you need to make this important because we have a time frame we're operating. This isn't made up by John and Jim. There's a time frame that the government operates on. There's tax codes, and we want to take advantage of. I have a feeling a lot of people are going to look back at this and go, "Boy, I wish I did more. I wish I bought, gold at 500. And this is one of those things that we have to start planning for, because this is what it takes to make it work. You've got to get actively involved. You got to pay attention. You need help. If you can do this yourself, that's fine. Most people come to us because, just like you said, either they don't know what to do, they want to do it faster, or they just want somebody to kind of hold their hand and walk them through it. And that's what we do. So if you're looking for some help, the process itself is pretty painless once you decide that's what you want to do. And the reality of it is, we can't help everybody. Not everybody's in a situation that's going to work. But if you are in the situation, this is something we want to take advantage of.
Yeah, absolutely.
We have a lot of people that do have these 401ks and other types of investment strategies, but they have no one really telling them what they need to do. Do I need to be in a Roth? Is it even available with my 401k? And so there's no one really telling them how to take care of their investment strategies. And that's where we come into play, is that we can help them kind of have some direction to go into to prevent some of these tax issues that we're talking about.
One of the things we discovered too, and I hate to say this, but this is where the clients need to be involved, because let's just say the average broker out there, money under management, they're not going to recommend to you that you take your $1 million portfolio and pay taxes on it now to save it for future taxes, because they get paid on your balance. Mm-hmm. So, I'm not picking on anybody. I'm just saying the reality is this isn't top on their agenda, is how do I cut my income by telling my clients to pay their taxes now. So it's just something we want to throw out there. The other one we hear all the time is, well, like recently the market's down. I don't want to move now. The market's down. Well, to us, that's almost a benefit. I don't want the market to be down, but let's move that money from the taxable bucket to the tax-free bucket and get the bounce back in the tax-free bucket. We're basically paying even less taxes, or vice versa. Hey, the market's up, great. Let's take some of that off the table and put a floor on it. There's always a reason to delay, and that's where you gotta make your decision. Which is more important? I don't have a crystal ball, but I've read a lot of books. I've read a lot of research, my personal experience here, I do not see how tax rates can't go up significantly.
We're looking for somebody with a crystal ball, though. If you know anybody, we're hiring.
Yeah, I'm sure they'll fit right in there. Let's see. So I'm going to break it down. We're running low on time, guys. There are only 3 types of people listening to this podcast right now at this moment. 3 types of people. I'm going to address one of them, and then I'm going to ask you guys to address the other 2. You ready?
I'm ready.
All right.
John's ready.
Always ready.
John's
Always ready. The 3 types of people listening to this podcast, number 1 are people that are already working with you. And I get to address them because that's the easy one. So for those listening that are already working with John and Jim, great job. You already know what kind of relationship you have with them. They're great guys. They're funny and fun to work with, I'm sure. Now, let's talk to the other 2 groups. The other 2 groups are people that are not working with you that are currently working with an advisor, and people that are not working with you that are not working with any advisor at all. So I want your guys' best advice or suggestions to those 2 groups of people. So people that are listening right now that are working with an advisor that's not you, and then people that aren't working with an advisor yet.
For people that aren't working with us, if you already have an advisor that you're happy with, God bless you. That's great. But if you're not getting what you feel you need, that's another thing. We find that there's a lot of advisors out there that they get stuck in the past. We talked about the paradigm shift. We talk about what's going on. Both John and I constantly reading, constantly going to educational seminars. I mean, there's a lot out there. It comes fast, and it changes even faster. So if you're not up on that, what was good 5 years ago isn't good anymore. I mean, the old strategies, I'm in complete agreement that when we were working before, if you asked me 10 years ago, put all your money away and take it out of retirement. But that's just not the case right now. Tax rates, I believe, will be up strongly. And once you think that tax rates are going to go up, that changes all the other thinking on its ear. That's been my experience. So we give advice. We're willing to sit down with anybody and talk to see if there's something we can help. We have a deal with everybody. If they don't feel we're of benefit to them, or we don't feel we can help them, we just tell them, nicely over the phone that this is not a good fit. But on the other hand, if you feel what we have is valuable, we would love to share it with you.
And I think a lot of the advisors, too, that are out there or that we deal with, they've got a one-size-fits-all mentality, and everything gets shoved into this one box, and they're not open to new ideas. And that's where we come in with fresh ideas and new ideas that will help them take advantage of some of these new products and plans that are out there on the market.
So let me ask you this. I want a little bit more help for those that are working with an advisor. What question should they be asking their current advisor to see if they're able to help them?
Well, one of the reasons John and I work together is because there's so much information out there. I think it's great to have a business partner to bounce things off of. We do that constantly. John's a driver and a pusher. He's always looking for something new. That's more of his. That's his area of expertise. He's always trying to get in front of the curve here, and that's a great partner to have. So what we like to do is combine that, and we do assets under management, we do insurance, we have a full service brokerage house here. So we're not tied to anything. We're not a one-trick pony. Whatever's in our client's best interest. So I would just say, if you're not getting the services you want, so look at yourself. If you've got, if you don't know what your taxes are going to be in retirement, why have you not had that discussion? If you're 75 years old and you're still 100% in the market, that would be of a concern to me. Yeah. We see it all the time. Clients come in, they have, in my humble opinion, they have way too much at risk for their age. One of the things we do, we have a lot of different strategies we use, but we can show them how they can either, get that same return with less risk, or just show them they don't need that much of return. We get caught in this accumulation phase, and everyone's caught in it, and everyone likes to make money, including me. But at some point, it's always got risk attached to it. So a lot of our clients, we find they just don't need to take the risk. Not that they need those returns, they just don't. So then it's a choice, and that's easy. It's kind of fun then if you know you don't need the money and you want to risk some of this for that. That's great. Or some of our clients just go, you know what, I'm done. Those days are behind me. I'm going to relax. I'm going to go on my sailboat, and the kids get what the kids get.
And we nicknamed that strategy MRI. It's minimal risk investment strategies is what we utilize, and so we kind of gave it a name so that we know what we're talking.
Kind of an autopilot, so it's not a lot of maintenance.
Yeah, absolutely. That sounds really good, actually. I'm going to cheat. So the question that I would say that anybody listening to this podcast should ask their current advisor is, what are my taxes going to be like in retirement? And they better have a pretty good answer, not what your taxes are going to be, but at least be able to start that discussion and say, you know what, that's a great question, and here's what we need to look at. And maybe they've already taken care of it. If they haven't, then you need to consider working with somebody who is taking that into consideration at all times. And I'm cheating one more time, guys. I'm going to actually address those that aren't working with an advisor already. Call John and Jim. Okay. That's simple. That's easy. That's the advice. That's straight from me, my opinion. But I would love for you to provide them with a phone number or email or something so they can reach out and say, hey, look, I do need to talk about this. You're right. The IRS loves to take my money already, and I think they'd love to take more. So I need to have a conversation. How do they get a hold of you?
Well, you can go to our website, which is wellroundedretirement.com. That's wellroundedretirement.com, or you can call us at the office, 281-665-3081. I don't call that number very often, so 281-665-3081, and we'd be happy to help you.
All right, I'm going to challenge you. I'm actually not letting you off the hook yet. Listeners, here we go. You ready? I'm gonna challenge the guys here. I would love for you to put together a paper, a white paper, whatever you want to call it, something on your website that you can include where if people go to your website, they can get a list of maybe 5 questions they should be asking their current advisor. What 5 questions are the most important questions to be asking to make sure that their current advisor is taking these things into consideration and is doing the research and is up on the latest thing like you guys are so that they know what to do on their behalf? Could you put something like that together?
Oh, yeah. We can put it on our blog, and you'll be able to download that information.
Perfect. All right. So by the time this is published, that'll be on the website, and we will have a link in the show notes. So if you're listening to the podcast right now on your computer or even on your phone, you can go to the show notes, and there should be a link there to go to that paper so you can see those questions you need to ask your current advisor. Guys, this was fantastic. I never thought talking about taxes would be as fun as today was.
Oh, it's great. You got to love it. I mean,
it's kind of like watching paint dry.
Exactly.
Oh, man. Guys, thank you so much for your time today.
Okay. Thanks, Eric.
And audience, once again, the last thank you goes to you. Thank you so much for listening to the Well-Rounded Retirement Podcast with Jim Donewald and John Glowacz. If you have not subscribed to the podcast yet, please click the subscribe now button below. This way, when Jim and John come out with a new podcast, it'll show up directly on your listening device. This makes it much easier to share these podcasts with your friends and family. And you know what? This is probably one you're going to want to share. Yes, you want to share a podcast about taxes. Everybody's facing it, so please share this with them so they can be prepared. Again, thank you so much for listening today. For everyone at CRIS Financial, this is Eric Johnson reminding you to live your best day every day. And we'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Well-Rounded Retirement Podcast. Click the subscribe button below to be notified when new episodes become available. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the guest and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of CRIS Financial. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only. The content is not intended to be a substitute for professional investing advice. Always seek the advice of your financial advisor or other qualified financial service providers with any questions you may have regarding your investment planning.